Welcome to Never Mind The Ballots election countdown. There's just 24 days to go, and it's Manifesto week. Today it's the Lib Dems, tomorrow the Tories, and then Thursday it's all eyes on Labour. The Prime Minister will be back on the world stage this week too, with the G7 in Italy, hoping to gain some clout back after his D-Day disaster. And from D-Day to DD, we're joined by former Cabinet Minister Sir David Davis. And what does your choice of biscuit say about your voting intentions? We crunch the numbers. With me today in the studio is our political correspondent, Noah Hoffman, fresh back from the week on the Labour bus. How was it?
It was a lot of sitting on a bus, but it was fun. It was nice to be with colleagues.
We'll talk about that in a second. But joining us down the line, former Cabinet Secretary, former Brexit Secretary, former Tory leadership contender, and a man I hear is on to his 11th general election. Morning, David Davis.
Good morning. That's dead right. Yeah.
Can, in those 11 elections, remember a time where a cabinet minister had to go on Sunday morning television to insist that the Prime Minister would indeed still be leading the party by polling day?
Well, it was a novelty. I don't remember that happening before, I must admit. But, you know, you have to bear in mind, what are we? We're still 4 weeks out from the election. In Margaret Thatcher's day, the whole election was only 3 weeks. So this is something of a marathon of things going in an unexpected direction, let's say.
Mr Davis, you've been there for Rishi Sunak at sort of times when he's been, slightly up against the ropes and thinking on things like Rwanda and things. What advice are you giving the PM today to how he can get back on the front foot? It's not been a brilliant campaign so far, has it?
Well, stick with it. I mean, look, it's mixed. I mean, obviously, there was the Normandy issue last week, which dominated everything, and that was a clear mistake. But for which I'm glad to say he apologised. But before then, I mean, it must have been real relief to Labour, because before then he had the subject on Labour's tax policy, tax strategy, and that was very uncomfortable for them. I mean, Keir Starmer didn't know how to answer the question in the first debate. And people were starting to really look closely at that. So, you know, it's gone backwards and forwards so far, and it will go backwards and forwards again. I mean, look, there are two common denominators of all the previous 10 elections I've fought. One is that accidents happen, to say the least. Mistakes are made by both sides, and it bounced backwards and forwards.
This was somewhat of an unforced error, though. It was a pretty massive mistake, though, isn't it?
Well, it was a mistake, but look, let's put it in context. I mean, because I was trustee of a regimental association, I've been to more of commemorations than most people, shall we say? So I'm fairly familiar with it. And I went to the 65th in Normandy. You know, I went because I'd raised some money for Normandy veterans and so on, along with others. And I wanted to be there for what was going to be the biggest, because most of them were in the 80s and 90s by then. And Gordon Brown wasn't going to go at all. Wasn't going to go at all. He only went when Obama suddenly announced he was going, and then he went to go rub shoulders. I didn't make a big political thing out of that. I just accepted that was that, and on we went. So it's a little bit hypocritical of Labour to attack on
It's not just Labour, though, is it? It's reform and that pincer movement that the Prime Minister is stuck in.
It's every opponent of the Tory party. Of course it is. No surprise there, you know.
But what did you make of Nigel Farage's comments at the weekend that appeared to question didn't appear to question the Prime Minister's patriotism, did question the Prime Minister's patriotism? Are you in the camp that was hearing a dog whistle there?
Well, he's just plumb wrong. Look, I mean, the Prime Minister's come from a middle-class background. He went to a public school and he became a very successful banker. Nigel Farage went to a public school paid for by his parents and went on to become a city trader. I don't know how successful he was or not. And where is he getting this idea that somehow he's got more of a grip on what the country wants than the Prime Minister? I think it's just bonkers, frankly.
Nigel Farage, when he did come announce he was standing last week, he used the phrase, "There's something happening out there." You're out there. Is there something happening?
Not as much as it looks like on the polls. I mean, there's always a gap. I mean, one of the other common denominators of 10 elections is the polls are always wrong. The error margin is somewhere between 6 and 20%. I mean, you saw in India a week ago, everybody's saying, "Oh, Modi's there forever."
1 billion people in
Now
India is probably a little trickier to poll than 60,000 votes, 60 million voters in the UK, right?
I think their polls are a bit bigger than ours, but here we are. But everybody got that wrong. Everybody got 2017 wrong in the other direction for us when Theresa May had that disastrous campaign. So it's difficult to judge. So far on the streets up here, I've got a Tory constituency and very rural in many ways, mixed rural and urban and suburban. And we're not seeing any of what you're seeing in the polls. I mean, I've seen almost no reform activity, tiny fraction. I've seen a lot of Tories desperately want the Tory government back, and I've seen quite a lot of people who still make up their mind. But beyond that, we're not seeing the sort of gap that looks like it's in the polls. So I think there's something odd. I think we're going to be surprised, put it that way, at the end of this game.
Rishi Sunak going to be the Prime Minister on the 5th of July?
Yeah, I think there's a reasonable chance of that.
Do you really think so?
Yeah, listen, as I said to you earlier on, in Thatcher's day, the whole campaign was shorter than the time we've got left. So there are plenty of things that can go wrong for the other side. And, we saw it with, I don't know, Brown's gaffe in his last election. These things happen and they change things. But also, this, as you pointed out, we're only just getting to the manifestos. When we get to Labour's manifesto in a couple of days' time, people are going to say to them, well, you keep saying the Tories' estimates of your £2,000 are wrong, but you haven't told us what the answer is. And The Guardian, that well-known Tory propaganda sheet, The Guardian is saying that they're going to have 12 tax increases in September in a, quotes, emergency budget. Well, this is a classical Blair Brown technique. Remember, they go in and said, oh, we've now seen the figures and we think we need to do this. Well, the figures are all public. It's all that sort of gambit. It's all nonsense. They should be explaining, and they'll be asked to explain, I hope, by people like you and other impartial journalists. They should be asked, explain about the 12 taxes. What are they going to be? Who they're going to fall on? They keep saying not working people. Well, Corbyn said that. Nobody believed him either.
And what about Tory manifesto? What do you think? What do you think could be in there? Is there going to be a rabbit that's going to turn the fortunes on their head?
Well, I no longer have access to those things.
I'm sure you're a sounding board for the Prime Minister's thoughts.
But I would expect. Well, we're already seeing today something on policing. I expect we'll see something on tax. I hope so, because I want to see taxes come down.
Is another national insurance cut going to make any difference when the last two don't appear to have made a dent in the polls?
Well, I think it's an indication, really. One of the things that has come up on the doorstep is tax. There's no doubt about that. And they want their taxes to come down. Tax and cost of living, they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
They want to come down. Rishi's done a brilliant job, frankly, in the face of Ukraine and the oil price rises and so on. A brilliant job of bringing inflation down. Margaret Thatcher would have been astonished at being able to bring inflation down from over 10% to 2% in 6 months. She never managed that in 10 years, 12 years. So, that was a very good thing. And I want to see lower taxes as well. And I think most of my colleagues do, because that's what we stand for. That's in many ways why we're here.
If he's doing such a brilliant job and has done such a brilliant job, why are only 1 in 5 voters saying they're considering voting Conservative?
Well, no, I don't think it's 1 in 5 are considering voting Conservatives. I think you'll find a lot more are considering voting Conservatives. He inherited. Let's be clear. I mean, it really the most difficult time. I mean, I've lived through the early Thatcher years and so on. I know what crisis looks like. But he's been given a whole series of once-in-a-generation crises. A war in Europe, a pandemic, the aftermath of the crash, which was not resolved when Brown went out of power. He said, remember that famous phrase, "There's no money left," from Liam Byrne to his successor in the Treasury. All of those things he's tidying up piece by piece in a systematic way. But it's not pretty, it's not glamorous, it's not Blairite sort of highfalutin stuff. It's getting on the job. And I think when people sit down before or when they're filling in their postal vote or they're going off to the polling station, what they'll be thinking about is their own families. What's going to happen to my income? What's going to happen to my cost of living? What's going to happen to my parents' ability to get an operation? What's going to happen to my kids' ability to get into school or indeed buy a house if they're a bit older? All those things are going to matter. If I wanted to pick a few things for the manifesto, I'd pick things about people's take-home pay. I'd pick things about housing. And I'd pick things about sorting out the NHS, because it's not about money. We put absolutely spectacular sums of money into the NHS. And in some of the years, the actual number of treatments have gone down. So I think we've got to sort that out too.
Isn't the problem?
But that's me. That's me. That's not the party.
Isn't the problem, though? You can list all of these things that the government have got right. You can list the things that the government have done, all the money they've spent. But it feels like the government has lost the voters' attention, lost the benefit of the doubt, and the public just want to give you a kicking regardless of the details.
Well, I think part of that is a function of the fact we're so far away from the actual decision day. I mean,
well, only 24 days to go. The big sign says it.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. You're going to be even grayer by then. You're going to be my colour by then.
Indeed, I am.
You're going to need a lot of quadruple chocolate cookies before
listen,
then.
a dose of sunny optimism as ever from you, Mr Davis. Thank you very much for joining us. Come and see us again soon before polling day, and we'll talk about whether those numbers are going the other way yet. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
No, I mean, that was a sort of disconnect between what senior members of the government and senior Tories are saying with what the polls are saying is phenomenal. Yes, they're not going to say everything's a bit rubbish, but is it bordering on delusional now?
I honestly think it is. I mean, bless, I admire his optimism, but I think what MPs like David, or now former MPs trying to be MPs again, like David Davis, don't understand is that for ordinary people who are on even just average wages, average salaries, life is a bit crap. It's so hard to access super basic public services, even like a GP appointment, and people want a reckoning. And I think that is something that they're struggling to wrap their heads around, at least publicly. In private, it's a different situation. In private, Tory candidates are a lot more scathing and a lot more disappointed.
There's been a sort of blowback. I was talking to people over the weekend who were saying, ministers who were saying, actually, it's not necessarily the public that are angry about D-Day, it's actually their own Tory activists and their own associations, and actually the sort of morale sucking of that moment has had a knock-on effect. What do you think the Prime Minister could do to get on the front foot this week?
Gosh, that's a hard question.
No pressure.
It's really hard to turn things around when, you're so far behind. And I just think, my personal view is that someone, and I hate the whole class warfare, culture war, but I do think there's an element of truth to this. If you are so wealthy as Rishi Sunak is, I don't understand how it is physically possible to empathise with the people who are struggling the most. And they're the ones who really need the help, and they're the ones who need policies curated around their lives. And so I really struggle to understand how he can do that.
Then what is Labour offering those people? Because so far they're not actually saying anything. They've stuck to their 5 pledges that then became 5 baby steps, whatever it was. And all the briefing we're told, and I'd have no reason to doubt it's I was going to say something else, but I'll call it spin. Is that this is not going to be a manifesto packed full of retail policy. Actually, it's going to be quite dull. Everything's called a triple lock on tax, triple lock on defence, triple lock on pensions, and they're just saying, look, we're not. They're trying to convince people we're just, we're not going to do anything different from the Tories. If the country genuinely is crying out for change, and the Labour government would want a mandate for change, they're going to have to start being honest about what they're actually going to do, right? David Davis had a point.
No, he does, and you're 100% right, but they're not going to. What their strategy, and to be fair, it is working, is to just sort of cruise through by saying nothing.
Quite cynical, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And also, I think David Davis did have a point that they are going to raise taxes. Yes, it won't be VAT, national insurance or income tax, but taxes will go up.
I'm old enough to remember when Boris Johnson stood in 2019 vowing not to put up national insurance, and what happened?
Exactly.
He put up national insurance.
The public, I think, does have a right to know before they cast their vote what those taxes will be. And there may be some taxes that they don't have a problem with. There may be some taxes that they really don't want to see rising. But Labour are keeping stum about all of that.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of sympathy, a lot more sympathy for raising capital gains tax on shares and second properties and the like, rather than VAT and the like.
Yeah.
Stay there, Noah, because we're going to talk about biscuits next. What does your biscuit say about you? Don't miss it. Now, what does your choice of biscuit say about who you're going to vote for? More in Common have the answers, and their director, Luke Trill, is with us today. Luke, we have a big pile of biscuits in front of us and a big pile of numbers on this piece of paper. What on earth are you talking about?
Well, we decided that, since snap elections are all the rage, we wanted to dig into the nation's biscuit choices and what they said about people's
and you
politics.
Found a correlation.
We've found some really interesting variations. So if we start with the fact that, when we did this poll, the national voting intention had Labour on 45%, Tories on 26%. So a big Labour lead. So the thing I should start with is that across all of the biscuits we looked at, Labour was ahead.
Yes.
Because they've got such a
They're
big lead.
ahead in the national polls.
But
so
the
they're
scale of their victory would be quite different depending on which biscuit lovers actually turned out to vote.
OK, let's dunk into this poll. The most Tory biscuits we can exclusively reveal are the chocolate digestive. 3 in 10 people who list rich tea biscuits as their favourite biscuit will also apparently vote Conservative in this upcoming election. Let's have a look. The chocolate digestive, I mean, it is the biscuit of the people, right?
It is.
I don't think it's an elite biscuit. It's not really a Tory biscuit.
No, it's...
But the rich tea biscuit, now this is arguably the world's worst biscuit. It's so boring, it's dry, you could put cheese... Noah, have one. Do you have rich tea biscuits? Noah is our resident Australian on the team, so... I mean, it's not a Tim Tam, I'm afraid, but but tuck in. It's crumbly, it's dry.
Should I try? OK, so this is the one that you're not a fan of.
Well, it's fine, but like...
It's perfect for dipping.
Yeah,
it's
true, I don't...
good dipping biscuit.
All right, I'm going to give it a go, but it kind of leaves a taste in the mouth. It's not much. It's tired.
Dry. It's very
14
dry.
years of power.
Yeah.
It's out of ideas. Where's the sweetness? I mean, I'm going to try and torture this analogy. The rich tea also, it writes itself. Rishi Sunak, we can call him.
Classic.
I mean, that's me out of jokes there. So how many? So the chocolate digestive has 30% Tory vote, and rich tea has 29%. So that's how much higher is that than?
So that is 4 points higher on the digestive, and 3 points higher on the rich tea. So if only digestive lovers went out to vote, the Tories would only be looking at a 1997 style.
Oh, I see. OK,
so better than some of those really bad projections of them on 50 or 60 seats. They really need that chocolate digestive vote to turn out on election day. Right. OK.
Let's talk about Labour. Now, Labour have... I'm losing my mind. The Maryland cookie will be voting for Labour. Now, this strikes me as a little unpatriotic. This is not a British biscuit. This is a Yankee Doodle chocolate-covered...
Yeah, but at least it's not Cuban. Like,
at least it's not Cuban. Yeah, well, Cuban...
At least it's an ally.
Fine. OK. But it's not very patriotic of Labour, because they also like Oreos, I hear. So Labour voters... they're 50%.
50%.
Love the Maryland cookie. So if they were, if only Maryland cookie and Oreo eaters went out to vote,
we would be talking Tory wipeout.
Complete
Labour
Tory
majority in the 200.
I'm going to try it.
300.
I mean, it's not bad. It's.
So Change Labour Party loves the special relationship because you've got the Oreos,
Very good
you've got the Maryland.
Very good point. I mean, it's a good biscuit.
It's a younger biscuit. It's a younger biscuit.
It's a generation says a Zoomer biscuit. Is it a Zoomer biscuit?
Zoomer biscuit.
This is a bit boomer.
Yeah.
This is a bit Zoomer.
And Oreos, certainly, right? I mean, the Oreos, it goes up to 56%.
That is actually...
I feel like that's something you have at school, like in a lunchbox, those little packets of Maryland biscuits.
Yeah,
like
I think lots of Labour voters will have grown up with Maryland cookies.
Right,
because they are a relatively recent addition to this country.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, I remember them sort of coming in... Well, I'm showing my age there. Right, now, the controversy. And Noah's face is horrified by this. The Garibaldi. This surprised me. If you like Garibaldi's, or the squashed fly biscuit as it's commonly known, you're most likely to vote Reform.
So did you say squashed fly?
Yeah, they look like squashed fly. But no, you have to try it. Come on.
No,
come on.
you've now said squashed fly.
Never mind the ballots.
No, it's actually really tasty.
It is a cultural phenomenon of this country that has clearly not yet reached Australia.
No, because we have taste.
Go on.
But if
Talk us through it.
Oh, I'm just thinking of flies
So again,
now.
if just Garibaldi Biscuit lovers
that sounds
voted,
good.
we would be heading close to the Tory reform crossover.
Oh, really?
Reform jumps
like
up from
that.
11% to 16%, Tories down on 21%, and only 39% of Labour views like it. So this is the biscuit that Nigel Farage is hoping defines the election.
Well, it is. He said he says there needs to be a revolution. He says there's a revolt happening. Garibaldi, obviously, revolutionary
Yeah,
Italian unifier-ish. I'm obsessed. My A-level history feels like a very long time ago. But an appropriately named Gary. What did you think? What do you think?
I thought it was rank.
What?
That's
rank?
disgusting.
No.
I do not want
I'm
to eat that
taking these
again.
home.
Please.
No, they're good.
These are good. These are good. It's
good. It's not-
Luke, stay there. We're actually going to do some serious polling stuff. You're not just here as biscuit guru. Excuse me. Don't go away. We'll talk about that serious polling in a minute, but after we've had some more biscuits. So when Luke isn't polling biscuits, he actually does very serious grown-up focus grouping. And let's have a look at some of the things he found about our favourite Marmite politician, Nigel Farage.
He's given a voice to people that maybe feel like they've been ignored.
In fairness to Nigel Farage, he has been one of the biggest influences in politics, like him or loathe him, in the last 20 years.
Like, where's he been? And he pops back out when there's an opportunity. I honestly think it's more so for his 5 minutes of fame these days.
Breath of fresh air to have someone who is more outspoken, but I don't like him.
He's a real character. He's outrageous and it's always controversial.
People who feel left out. So Nigel Farage answers to a lot of that.
See, I don't always agree with everything that he says and does, but a lot of the things that he does and says do make sense.
Luke, I mean, that wasn't as negative as I've seen of focus groups in the past about Nigel Farage. Is he thinking what we're all thinking? Is he saying what we're all thinking?
Well, I think what you get from that, and it comes through in the polling as well, is that he is the ultimate Marmite politician. You know, you get those people, and there's a lot of them that say, do you know what, I like the fact that he speaks his mind.
Yeah.
You know, he's not putting on an act, he's authentic. You get other people saying, I just can't stand him. You know, I don't like what he's got to say. Why is he popping back up again? I think the big question, which we've been trying to dig into, though, is those people who do like him, that find him refreshing, would they really want him as leader of the opposition, though?
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. That's the hurdle he's never passed.
Do the voters know that actually it's a free hit on this one?
Yeah.
Or is it a free hit? Because actually, do you end up, making... Like, is the Tory attack line of a vote for reform, what Keir Starmer wants, helping Keir Starmer? Is that... There's something to that, right?
Yeah, there is something to that, and particularly with core Tory voters, that line that if you vote for Nigel Farage and reform, you're going to give Keir a bigger majority, I think could spook enough normally loyal Tory voters who, after D-Day and everything else, are thinking, do you know what, I might sit on my hand this time, to actually go out and vote.
How bad's the D-Day thing been for the government?
Absolutely disastrous. Totally catastrophic. We spoke to voters for The Sun on Sunday, in Thanet on Friday night, and people it was the disrespect. They couldn't understand how someone could make that decision. I think lots of us can't understand it. But the worst thing, I think, is that it goes right to the heart of the type of voters that the Tories have been trying to shore up over the past few weeks. Those likely to go to reform, those who've gone to don't know, people that should be going out and voting are the most angry about it. And beyond all of that, of course, it's just drowned out anything else from the Tories.
Is it fixable?
I think it's going to be hard to fix it. I think they've got to have a good manifesto launch this week. Something's got to cut through. The interesting thing is, Sunak didn't have a bad debate, right?
Yeah.
The polls were split on who'd won, which, given his personal ratings, is a win for Sunak.
And Starmer was said to have walked off the stage feeling like he'd cocked it up.
And certainly when we watched the debate with a focus group in Milton Keynes, they were saying, I don't like Sunak interrupting so much. But Starmer never gives an answer. Why doesn't he talk about what he's going to do rather than just criticising? And I think had it not been for D-Day, the Tories could have spent this weekend really ramming that home, and it's knocked that out of the water.
No, manifestos this week. Tories, we understand, I think it's going to be in the West Midlands somewhere, not a surprise, an area they need to hold up. How much detail are you expecting? Is it going to be throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, or is it going to be a sort of theme to it? What are you hearing?
I think we're going to expect more substance and density and more sort of concrete policies than Labour, as we were discussing before. I think a few red meat policies, again, can be seen...
Another cat national insurance,
Exactly.
stamp duty up to 425,000, where it is now, admittedly,
Yes.
but making that permanent.
Yeah.
Giveaways, basically.
Yeah, because this whole campaign, really, for the Tories is about minimising losses rather than gaining new seats. They've kind of got that idea out. So we're going to see them really appeal to the traditional Tory voters.
I think the Prime Minister was campaigning in West Sussex today. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know, right, Luke?
It just goes out, you would not expect a Tory Prime Minister to be worried about what's happening in Sussex. And I think the difference that they're trying to make at the moment with this campaign is between a 1997 style, very bad result, and an absolute wipeout, which could, if you believe some of the MRP polls, these seat projection polls, see Ed Davey becoming the leader of the opposition.
God help us. Jack Elson, our colleague, will not be pleased about that. He hates Ed Davey. While I got you, Luke, just quickly, Serious Faces back on, laughing at Lib Dems comes at the end of the show rather than the middle. Are you picking up any sort of idea that, as David Davis said to us earlier on the show, that Labour are just trying to ghost their way into number 10? They're just trying to, not say anything. Is there any blowback for that detectable yet?
Well, there's no blowback
beyond the commentary.
As long as the Tories keep making mistakes. I think that's the challenge. The interesting thing is that, in some ways, David Davis is right. I had someone in a focus group last week who had to Google Keir Starmer to find out who he was. And then she sort of said, oh, he's that guy that never smiles, isn't he? There was that. The public don't know about him. They do actually like him more when he talks about being the son of a toolmaker.
Yeah, we saw that with our worm last week.
And whenever we poll on that,
goes
in. So there's a chance for him to introduce himself. I do think if it wasn't so catastrophic on the Tory side, he'd be facing more questions from the public on, so come on, you're really good at prosecuting what's gone wrong. Tell us what you're going to do.
But that said, David Davis did say, still got 24 days to go. That's traditional election campaigns have been shorter in the past. A lot can turn on the head, but if election was tomorrow, where would you put it?
I would be heading for a big Labour landslide.
Wipe-out territory? Or?
I'm a little bit less bullish on a Labour total wipe-out of the Tories. I think we're heading for roughly 1997 at the moment, but it could get worse.
So, 160-odd seats?
160 seats.
I'm going to go back on the bookies. I've spent days trying to work out where to put the money. But as promised, before we go, the section of the show we call Let's Laugh at Ed Davey. What's he been doing this weekend? Let's have a look.
Playing tennis on the
He's been playing tennis.
Why?
Of course he has.
Well, it's part of our...
Actually, you know what? Not a terrible forehand there. Oh, we missed that one. But he's got some power to that. It's not too bad. It's not the stupidest thing he's done. Oh, he missed that one. There we go. Luke Trill, Noah Hoffman, David Davis, if he's still here. If you can still hear us, thank you very much for joining Never Mind The Ballots. That's all we've got time for today. Never Mind The Ballots election countdown will be back tomorrow. Remember, you can subscribe, youtube.com/@sunelection. You will see the videos first. See you tomorrow.